Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's the Sketch Monkey here, and today is a special day because we're gonna have a look at a legend when it comes to sports cars and car design in general, and that would be of course the Lamborghini Countach. So what we're going to do in this video, we're gonna take one of the later models of the Countach and we're going to turn it into something that could have been released in the 2019 Geneva Motor Show. I know Lamborghini just released the Sian, which has some design cues from the Countach if you look closely. So I thought it would be fun to do a modernization of the original shape of the Countach and see how that is going to turn out. To start with, let's jump into Photoshop and I'm going to show you the changes that I plan to make to the Countach to make it into a car that could be built today. Now, before we jump into all the digital stuff, let's just have a cup of coffee and pull out some markers. In this case, I'm using Motika markers. I got this from Motika to try out, so I thought, why not use them to try and see if we can sketch a Lamborghini in side view using them. So this is to get the hand warmed up and the creative mind going. And what I like to do when I sketch with markers like this is always start with a side view. If you want to start to learn how to sketch cars, I think the best way to do it is to start with side views, because that's how you get the proportions right and you get the feel for the overall volumes of a car. And once you know that, you can jump into more advanced stuff and more perspective views if you want to do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm using these Motika markers, and I'm also using a very light blue shade to have as the reflection from the sky. It just gives it a touch of color instead of just using cool grays, and I think it adds a lot to the values of the car, and it's something that I just like to do. Another thing I usually do is to add, if I have the blue on top, then I want to have some warmer tone or even browner tone the further down on the body we go, and that would be the reflection of the ground that is reflected towards or in the surfaces that are facing down towards the ground. Now, some final steps to this sketch is to use a white pencil to sketch out the wheels. I want to go with a classic round Italian Alfa Romeo and Lamborghini wheels with these round holes in them. And of course, you got to think about the highlights and the shading on these as well. Do you want them to be glossy, matte, or whatever? And I, of course, want to have a little bit of gloss in there. So I like to finish the sketch up with adding some white ink. And once I'm done with all the markers, I just go back with a big pen to clean up all the lines. Because sometimes when you use markers on top of a big pen, the lines tend to bleed and they get a little bit messy. I like it, I don't mind it, but if you want, you can go back at the end and clean it up with the big pen. Alright, so here we are inside of Photoshop. I'm very excited to get started on this. There are some few key elements graphically about the Countach that when you see it, you instantly recognize it as a Countach. One is of course the wing, which I want to keep pretty much standard. I'm not going to touch the wing because it's such a special wing for the Countach, and I think it could be applied to some Le Mans style race cars today, so I want to keep the styling of the wing as it is. But the main feature that I'm going to work on in this redesign is the rear graphics. So we have this part right here, and this to me is typical Countach, and I don't think I've seen any other car with this type of graphic in the rear. So we have this part right here, and what I want to do is work inside of this part and of course update the rear lights. So I want to make something modern inside of this and maybe have it be like an opening in the rear, and inside of this opening we have the graphics of the light. I'm gonna have to figure out if I want to make a Y shape like this, like we have on recent Lamborghinis, or if I want to keep some visual representation of these three separate lights here, like they did with the Sian. The Sian has 3 separate lights, and it also has this graphic in the rear in a modern way. But to me, if I want to modernize Countach. I want to keep it closer to the original styling. And the Sian, of course, is a brand new car. It's based on the Aventador, but still, it has some resemblance to the Countach. But what we're gonna do in this video is take this actual shape and modernize it as it is. So that's the first change that I'm going to make. I also want to work on this area down here, because I think this black plastic thing right here, that needs to go, and I want to clean that up. Keep the quad exhausts, and also work on the wheels here. Have them, especially the front, I want that to stick out a bit so that it's almost flush with the side here, and increase the wheel size. Probably change the shape of the wheel as well. Even though this is a rolling shot, we can still see some shape of the wheels. Another thing I want to do is work on these air outlets right here. I want to modernize that and create some piece in the body of the car that's integrated more into the design, and that feels like, and that doesn't feel like it's an afterthought or a part that was added to the car once it was completed. Finally, remove this little indicator or whatever this is on the side there. I think that's it. I'm gonna keep it pretty simple and clean it up. As always, I like to clean up the shapes. When it comes to old cars like this, the main thing that I do when I modernize the car is to take all the parts, to keep the original style of the car, the design of the car, the proportions and the mold of it, and then add the different parts, such as the rear lights and parts that are added to on top of the shape. Those are the parts that needs to be redesigned and modernized. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. Now let's get to work and let's see how this is going to turn out. Now, isn't it crazy to think that the Lamborghini Countach, the prototype for it, was released in 1971. That's the same year as BMW released the 2002, and the Fiat, the 127, and Dodge released their Dodge Ram van. I think it's interesting to see what other cars were released in that same era, and then Lamborghini just decided, let's just drop the craziest design we can come up with. And not only that, but let's turn it into a actual production car. That's one of the reasons why I think this modernization is so, it was so much fun and such an interesting modernization, because the design itself was so ahead of its time that we're barely catching up to it right now. So even if this is a 50-year-old design, crazy. It's 50 years old. Even if it's 50 years old, if we add some modern touches to it, it feels like it could actually be a car of today. It's insane. Now, the Countach was of course designed by Marcello Gandini and the Bertone Design Studio. His design for the Countach predecessor, the Lamborghini Miura, achieved commercial success from the automotive press when it was introduced in March 1966. Following the Miura, Gandini began experimenting with a new, more angular and geometric design language in a series of concept cars for Lamborghini, Alfa Romeo and Lancia. In particular, the 1968 Alfa Romeo Carrabo and the 1970s Lancia Strato Zero were direct styling precursors to the Countach. Like the Countach, they were both entirely wedge-shaped mid-engine designs with a low flat front, truncated tail and angular details. And both of these concepts featured unconventional methods of entry into the passenger compartment, a hinged windshield for the Strato Zero, and of course scissor doors for the Carrabo, foreshadowing the scissor doors used on the Countach. So, talking about this redesign here, what we have now is, I'm happy with the rear end, and what I need to do now is work on the graphics of the taillights. I'm not sure if I want to keep if I want to add the Y shape that we have on modern Lamborghinis, or add something graphically that follows the outline of where the rear light sits. So, following the outline of the classic Countach rear end graphics. And in the end, I decided to go with the second alternative and create these rear lights instead of using the Y shape. I think it suits the car more because the Y-shaped are used on, they started using the Y-shape not that long ago, and this styling suits this era better than if I were to use the Y-shaped. So there it is, guys. That's the redesign of the Lamborghini Countach, and I have to say, this was probably one of the most fun modernizations I've done on this channel. I love the end result of it. I just think it looks very cool, and it looks like it can be produced today with this original 70s styling, and that just goes to show how good of a design the original actually is. Of course, Marcello Gandini, he knows what he's doing. He's done a few classics throughout the years. Now, this was obviously focused on the rear view, and if this video gets, let's say, 5,000 likes, we'll do the front view as well. But that's totally up to you, of course. I'm the Sketch Monkey. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me today. I hope to see you in the next one. Take it easy.